B-scan has items that try to tap the 4 dimensions of psychopathy. That is manipulation, deception, and conning behavior, shallow emotions, lack of empathy, lack of remorse, sensation-seeking behavior, impulsivity, and generalized rule-breaking behavior. So these 4 dimensions are captured by the B-scan, but they're designed and used in a corporate context. So they're not related to criminal behavior, but to behavior within the corporate situation.
In 2006 schreef Hare het boek Snakes in Suits, waarin hij speculeerde over het aantal psychopaten in het bedrijfsleven. Veel onderzoek kon hij toen nog niet doen, want leidinggevenden werken niet snel mee aan onderzoek naar psychopathie. Hij bedacht een truc. Samen met zijn vakgroep ontwikkelde hij de B-scan, een checklist die mensen rondom de baas moeten invullen. Hij onderzocht 203 topleidinggevenden en publiceerde onlangs voor het eerst de cijfers.
The prevalence of psychopathy among these 203 senior executives, some female, some male, was relatively high, about 4 or 5%. And yet these people had no contact with the law as far as we know, no criminal records, and they'd managed to rise fairly high in the organization. So we were able to assess them with the psychopathie-checklist, so we had really good scores on them. But we also had a lot of inside information from the corporations. There were 7 different corporations, looking at their behaviors in the organization, how they were perceived by their peers, their subordinates, and superiors, and what sort of performance evaluations they had. And the results actually were quite dramatic.
In what way?
The higher the score on the psychopathy checklist, the more positively the individual was seen by most of the co-workers in terms of charisma, ability to have new ideas. So they looked really good. But in fact, their performance was really, really bad. The higher the score, the worse their performance in terms of doing things for the corporation.
See, that's what you never got, kid. It's not about the money. It's about the game.
Ons beeld van de psychopaat wordt bepaald door Hollywood. Maar de psychopaat in de zakenwereld is geen bloeddorstig monster uit op moord. Voor hem draait het om macht en geld.
I actually don't work with film stars. I've been asked to consult on a couple of films. Well, the example was Nicole Kidman, the movie Malice. She did call me to ask if I would consult with her on a movie.
Let me just... I said I'm fine!
In which she had to portray a psychopathic female, but she wanted to find out how she should do so. What were the tricks and what sorts of movements and gestures should she use?
What could you tell her?
Well, I did go down and I tried to explain to her how psychopaths operate. At that time, we didn't know very much about female psychopathy, more about male psychopathy. But I did have a number of tapes that I brought down to show her. Most of the psychopaths portrayed in the movies, the description is usually not too bad up to a point. The point is where they try to explain why they are the way they are. For example, Hannibal Lecter. How did he develop into the monster that he was? Well, it's because he saw his sister being eaten by, well, Nazis or Soviets or somebody, and that changed him dramatically. That's not quite the way it happens.
But most of the time it's a genetic component.
There are strong genetic factors, but of course these genetic propensities are modified by the environment. So it's not all genetics. Well, psychopaths can get into companies very, very easily. They can apply the normal way. They go through personnel. They may respond to an ad, or they may do the round saying, well, look, do you need some good people to handle these problems? Quite often they'll study the company ahead of time so they know what the issues are. And then if they're required to have a personnel investigation, they do exceedingly well because they'll have resumes that look terrific, but usually they're fake. How many personnel officers actually bother to check up the resume? They don't. They don't phone people up to the company.
Job interview?
Job interview, they'll eat the interviewer up. So they'll have a tendency for not only exaggerating their own accomplishments and their talents, but they'll quite often misuse words in kind of a strange way. And they'll misuse the word with confidence.
Give me guys that are poor, smart, and hungry, and no feelings. You win a few, you lose a few. But you keep on fighting. And if you need a friend, get a dog.
You have to think about the psychopath as having a very large behavioral repertoire. It's like an actor who could play 100 different roles. Well, he can play 100 different roles. So if charm doesn't work, well, then you can move on to the next stage. You can then use subtle intimidation. And if that doesn't work, more direct intimidation, then working up the threats and then actually to doing some damage.
Because finally they want to get that top function.
They want to get the top job, and they can do it a number of different ways. One is to destroy the reputation of your competitors. But at the same time, you've got to enhance your own reputation, so you've got to be fairly careful about that. You can end up by joining the same country club or the golf club that the president belongs to. And of course, then you meet him playing golf, and after a while, you're golf buddies. And then when you're back in the organization, everybody knows that you're friends with the boss, and they know what you're doing, that you're manipulating, destroying corporate records, you're stealing money, things of that sort. Who's going to say anything? There have to be confrontations in most organizations, and unfortunately, in most cases, the confrontation results in the victims leaving the job, being transferred, fired. They say, I've had enough, because they simply cannot deal with the psychopathic individual. Psychopath, you have to understand, is not somebody who's going to give up easily, doesn't like to lose, is not going to move out of the situation because of embarrassment or fear of being found out. They're going to fight.
Wil je weten of jouw baas een psychopaat is en waarom Hannibal Lecter dat juist niet is? Kijk dan op onze site. Daar staan de persoonlijkheidskenmerken genoemd die ook in de checklist van Robert Hare naar voren komen.